We begin our walk in the footsteps of the Oscar-winning filmmakers at its source, at a place which, over its decades of activity, has educated generations of outstanding cinematic personalities. You can find yourself on Targowa Street, in front of the Łódź Film School, officially the Polish National Film, Television and Theatre School in Łódź. As you pass through the gate, you can see on your right the classicist palace where the rector of the university now resides. The history of the palace goes back to the early 20th century. In 1918, after Poland regained its independence, it became the property of Widzewska Manufaktura and was inhabited by the company's president himself, Oskar Kohn. Thus, although it is a complete coincidence of names, the school can be said to have some sort of Oscar roots. This residence was set in an elegant garden, and once the film school moved in the 1940s, it was still tended by the former gardener of Oskar Kohn. While lovingly tending the flowering trees and shrubs, he was not overtly sympathetic towards the students, whom he referred to as a bounty destroying the goods of the factory owner. Speaking about the history of film education in Poland, it would be appropriate to start with the Kraków workshop of the Young Cinema Committee, which had been active since May 1945. Its participants included Wojciech Jerzy Has and Jerzy Kawalerowicz, whose Pharaoh, produced almost 20 years later, was nominated for an Academy Award in the non-English language film category. However, in 1945, just after the war in November, the state enterprise Film Polski was established, and 2 weeks later, the Film Institute followed, which was located precisely in Oskar Kohn's villa. Since then, the palace on Targowa Street has become the permanent home of the film community. It was the place where film screenings and lectures were organized, bringing together the entire cultural milieu of Łódź. In the middle of 1946, thanks to the head of Polish film Alexander Ford, it was decided to move all film teaching activities from Kraków to Łódź. Thus, Łódź gained the first and for years the only university of this profile in Poland. The inauguration of the academic year took place on 18th of October 1948. Among the first lecturers were documentary film director and longtime dean of the directing faculty Jerzy Bossak. Security service officers suspected that he held this role only in order to guard the hidden treasures on Targowa Street belonging to Oskar Kohn, camera operator of the Polish Army Film Headquarters Stanisław Woll, director and screenwriter Antoni Bogdziewicz, called Bodzio by his students, who led a team of cameramen of the Uprising Chronicles during the Warsaw Uprising. Eugeniusz Sękalski arrived from the West, where he managed the film office of the Polish government in exile, was nominated for an Oscar in 1941 for The White Eagle in the documentary film category. And finally, the director and later rector of the Academy, film historian and theoretician, fondly called Tusio by his students, Jerzy Teplitz. Years later, Andrzej Wajda, a graduate of the Łódź School, emphasized that these are names that will forever remain carved in marble, because these people did not waste the historic opportunity they got during those not particularly favorable times for the arts, and created a school without which Polish cinema would have no future. Initially, the school taught at 2 faculties, filmmaking and cinematography, and since 1952 also organization and economy. Its main building, precisely the Kohn Palace, was used as the rector's office, dean's offices, lecture rooms, a projection room, a photography lab, and even students' dormitories. The cinema hall became a cult place, and despite the Iron Curtain, behind which Poland was located at the time, students were able to watch American films or French and German avant-garde films thanks to the foreign contacts of lecturers. Such screenings allowed gaining a broader perspective, believing that it was part of the European cultural tradition far from socialist realist standards. The surrounding fence divided the school from its sad reality. outside. The atmosphere inside was filled with openness, an uninhibited lifestyle, and intellectual ferment, which was not always to the liking of the authorities of the time. The wooden staircase on which the later masters of Polish cinema used to sit during their student days has become a legend. In 1958, the film school merged with the theater school, which had existed in Łódź since 1946 and was headed by Kazimierz Dejmek after Leon Schiller left the city. Leon Schiller, eminent theater director, critic, educator, became the patron of the combined universities and remains so to this day. One of the first graduates who made an invaluable impact on Polish cinema was Andrzej Wajda. Wajda moved to Łódź from Kraków, where he studied painting at the Academy of Fine Arts. When Wajda arrived at his alma mater by train in 2009 for a meeting with students at the film school, he was greeted on the platform by the university's rector at that time, Robert Gliński, and a group of students dressed in costumes for Pan Tadeusz film. Questioned by journalists about what the director expects from the meeting, he replied that he expects very harsh criticism, as he remembered that back when he was a student himself, nothing appealed to the students. Of all Polish directors, Wajda is the one whose films have most often been nominated for an Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film. These were, in turn, The Promised Land from 1974, The Maids of Wilko from 1979, Men of Iron from 1981, and Katyń from 2007. Though neither film won a statuette, the director was recognized, and in the year 2000 he was awarded the Academy Award for Lifetime Achievement. Meanwhile, Tadeusz Jaworski, later documentary filmmaker, studied at the film school, initially associated with the Educational Film Studio in Łódź, and later with the Documentary Film Studio in Warsaw. After the events of 1968, he emigrated to Canada, where his Oscar-nominated documentary film Selling Out was made in 1972. Roman Polański became another graduate of the Łódź School who was later recognized around the world. Although he originally dreamed of an acting career, he eventually became a student of the directing department. The short film he produced, Break Up the Dance, has gone down in history, mainly because the whole idea was to organize a dance party for his fellow students, before the start of which Polański arranged with a gang of local hooligans to invade the school grounds at the right moment and start a brawl. Although this ended in a reprimand from the Board of Education, Polański managed to capture everything on film. The rich biography of this outstanding and later also controversial director contains many Oscar themes. While he was still in Poland, Polański made Knife in the Water in 1961, which received a nomination for Best Foreign Language Film. After emigrating to the United States in mid-60s, he filmed Rosemary's Baby with the iconic lullaby composed by Krzysztof Komeda. The film earned a nomination in the Best Adapted Screenplay category. In 1974, he made a neo-noir crime film called Chinatown, with Jack Nicholson and Faye Dunaway, for which Polański won a nomination for Best Director. Another nomination was for the 1979 film Tess, with Nastasia Kinski in the lead role. However, the Golden Statuette went to the director for the film The Pianist, telling the wartime fate of the Polish musician and composer Władysław Szpilman, played by Adrian Brody. This Palme d'Or winning film at Cannes won 3 Oscars for Best Director, Best Screenplay, and Best Actor in a leading role, as well as 4 other nominations, including Best Cinematography by Łódź Film School graduate Paweł Edelman. On the Oscar trail, we discover more names with connections to the Łódź Film School. Among the 1953 graduates is Jerzy Antczak, whose film adaptation of Maria Dąbrowska's novel Nights and Days won a nomination in the Foreign Language Film category in 1976. In the 1960s, one of the students was Jerzy Skolimowski. Skolimowski started out as a screenwriter. He worked, among others, with Andrzej Wajda on Innocent Sorcerers or with Roman Polanski on the aforementioned film Knife in the Water. After many years spent in exile, the director returned to Poland in 2008. His latest film, EO, was a philosophical fable on the significance of one donkey's life in the world of violence. It was nominated for an Oscar in 2023 in the category of Best International Film. Also in Skolimowski's days, Krzysztof Kieślowski studied in Łódź. He began his career as a documentary filmmaker, but quite quickly he moved towards feature films. Kieślowski shot his masterpiece, Blind Chance, partly at the former Łódź Fabryczna railway station. However, his early documentary masterpiece, From the City of Łódź, was set in the city that became his student's home for several years. Three Colors Red is the last part of the trilogy for which Kieślowski received a nomination in 1994 for Best Director and Best Screenplay, co-written by Krzysztof Piesiewicz. The third nomination was for the film in the Best Cinematography category by Piotr Sobociński, also a graduate of the Łódź Film School. On the other two parts of the same trilogy, graduates of the same cinematography department also collaborated with Kieślowski, namely Edward Kłosiński on White and Sławomir Idziak on Blue. Anyway, Sławomir Idziak already has a quite separate Oscar success to his credit. In the 1990s, his collaboration with American filmmakers began and earned him a Gold Statuette nomination for his cinematography in Black Hawk Down, directed by Ridley Scott. Unluckily, in the same year, the biggest production in the history of the cinema, The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, was nominated, and the creators of this film won, among others, the award for the best cinematography. Despite this, however, Idziak's phenomenal work has not gone unnoticed and has secured him invitations to work on other Hollywood films. Speaking of Hollywood, we also owe a place in our story to Dariusz Wolski, who was a cinematography student here in the 1970s. With the help of the rector, he managed to get a passport and in 1979 fulfilled his great dream of traveling overseas. Although his beginnings in New York were not easy, Wolski eventually moved to Los Angeles, where over the years he began working with some of the biggest American directors. In fact, it is the Polish cinematographer who was responsible for the cinematography of the Pirates of the Caribbean series, Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland, or Ridley Scott's Prometheus. In 2021, Wolski received his first Oscar nomination for News of the World, directed by Paul Greengrass, with Tom Hanks in the lead role. To quote the prominent Polish film critic also associated with Łódź, Maria Kornatowska, it is said that there are two cinematography gangs in Hollywood, a Hungarian one and a Polish one, but the Polish one is better. Remaining in the circle of outstanding cinematographers, graduates of Łódź Film School, we cannot forget the Swedish-Danish filmmaker Hoyte van Hoytema, who is the author of cinematography for one of the best films about the adventures of Her Majesty's Agent James Bond, Spectre, by Sam Mendes. Van Hoytema is best known for his work with Christopher Nolan. After the epic award-winning Interstellar, they made Dunkirk together, which earned both filmmakers Oscar nominations in 2018. Concluding the subject of the Faculty of Cinematography, a graduate and later professor and deputy dean of cinematography at Łódź Film School, Ryszard Lęczewski, and Łukasz Żal, who graduated from the same faculty, are the authors of the cinematography for Paweł Pawlikowski's film Ida. Their way of seeing the world was honored with an Oscar nomination for Best Cinematography. It is worth to recall that Ida won the statuette in the Best foreign language film category, which was an extraordinary celebration of domestic cinematography, as it was the first time in the history of cinema that a Polish film won the statuette in this category. Paweł Pawlikowski continued his collaboration with Łukasz Żal on Cold War, a picture that once again earned the cinematographer a nomination for the Academy Award. However, Oscar tropes at the Łódź Film School lead not only to feature filmmakers. In 1994, Marcel Łoziński's film 89mm from Europe was nominated for an Oscar in the Best Documentary Film category. The title refers to the difference between the width of the tracks in Europe and those in the former USSR. In a perfectly constructed black and white documentary, Łoziński shows a place that marks the border of two worlds. As for animated film, it was a great success for Polish cinema when Zbigniew Rybczyński, a graduate of the Faculty of Cinematography at the school, won his Oscar for the film Tango in the category of the Best Short Animated Film in 1983. After finishing the walk, I encourage you to find the YouTube fragment of the Oscars ceremony where Rybczyński receives the Oscar, comically prolonging his speech, but also alluding to the then current events surrounding the Solidarity movement. In 2002, A Man Thing, directed by Sławomir Fabicki, a graduate and then fourth-year student at the film school's directing department, was nominated for an Oscar. This poignant portrayal of a traumatized child who directs all his empathy towards an old dying dog in a shelter was also honored with a nomination for the so-called Student Oscar. In recent years, we had one more chance for a golden statuette thanks to the graduate of the Łódź Film School, when in 2019 Jan Komasa's film Corpus Christi was nominated in the Best Foreign Language Film category. The story is that of a reform school pupil who, through a series of coincidences, becomes a fake priest in a small town in southern Poland. It failed to win with the Korean picture Parasite. However, in Poland the film was a huge success in terms of attendance as well as recognition, winning 10 awards at the Gdynia Feature Film Festival and 11 Eagles, Polish Film Academy Awards. Looking for Oscar's footprints, as it were, we already traversed a big chunk of the school's history. Łódź Film School has always boasted a top-notch team of educators, among whom we can still find Oscar winners. At the Department of Film and Television Directing, Professor Eva Braun teaches. In 1993, she, together with Alan Starsky, received the Academy Award for Best Art Direction and Set Decoration of Schindler's List by Steven Spielberg. On the other hand, Jarosław Kamiński, editor of two already mentioned films by Paweł Pawlikowski, the Oscar-winning Ida and the nominated Cold War, as well as the international co-production Aida, nominated in 2021, is a lecturer in the film editing course here. In the 1990s, the school was modernized extensively. The educational offer was broadened with the introduction of new study courses. The campus was expanded and retrofitted with modern equipment. In 1990, the film studio Index was set up to realize students' graduation thesis. Łódź Film School is appreciated not only in Poland but also abroad. For years now, it has been listed among the best film schools in the world by the prestigious magazine The Hollywood Reporter.